This is the key to success. And to understand it, you have to look back. When in the 50s the sun ate the skin of the men in the cotton field of Texas, there was he, a young day laborer, thin, with his back bent from bending so much, with his hands split by the cotton, because cotton deceives. It seems soft, but it is treacherous. It is full of small thorns that stick to the skin and bleed. That was his job: tear cotton from sun to sun, fill huge ribs that then weighed as much as he himself. The young man lived in a poor room, with wooden walls that let the wind pass. He slept in a narrow bed, with a rough blanket that never heated enough. Breakfast was watered coffee, a hard bread, sometimes cold beans from the night before, and nothing else. Every morning the cotton field waited for him like a sentence. It was a white sea that spread until it was lost sight of, a sea that did not forgive. Each pound collected was a coin. Each pound that was missing was hunger. The foreman mounted a horse, always with a loud voice and a hard look. Faster, boy! That cotton field is not picked up alone. The young day laborer lowered his head and kept starting, not because he liked it, but because he knew that if he responded too much, he would lose his place in the block. And without that place, there was no hard bread on the table. He was a day laborer. He charged per pound, and the pay was never enough. Life seemed made to tire him, to bend him, to make him believe that he would stay like this forever. But no, in the deepest part of his chest, he kept a dream: to have his own cotton field. He repeated it like a prayer. Someday I will have my cotton field. While the other day laborers resigned, he dreamed. He dreamed of a piece of land, even if it was small, where to sow, wait for the rain, and see his own cotton bloom. He dreamed of walking among furrows that were his, not of the boss or the foreman. That dream, although small, was the only thing that kept him alive. But dreams always have enemies, and his dream reached the ear of the foreman. At noon, under the sun that fell like lead, the foreman raised his voice so that everyone could hear. A field of his own, he said, laughing. That is not for day laborers. That is for owners. The colleagues laughed. Some did out of fear, others out of mockery. Laughter hurt more than the thorns of cotton. One, with a compassionate tone, murmured to his ear, "Do not dream so much, boy." The one who dreams in the cotton field trips and gets lost. The young day laborer squeezed his teeth. He wanted to shout that he did not understand anything, that he did not want to be rich. He just wanted a piece of land for his family. But he did not. He only answered, almost without a voice. One day, the foreman heard and mocking imitated his tone. "Someday, huh? Someday you will get tired. And when that happens, I will be the first to tell you. I warned you." Every word was a blow, every laugh a wound. But instead of killing the dream, they set him on fire. The young man chose not to give up. He began to save. Every coin, every penny, he kept it. He did not enter a canteen, even if he was invited. He did not buy tobacco, even if the nights were long and silent. He did not spend on new boots, even if his already had holes. Others looked at him strange. One afternoon, while they rested a little under the scarce shade of a tree, one of the day laborers mocked him. "Why do you save?" "Boy, to buy the sky. Cotton is not sold in pieces." Another among laughs added, "Save everything you want. In the end, it will always be day laborer." He took a deep breath, wiped the sweat off his forehead, and calmly answered, "If I spend today, I lose tomorrow. If I save today, tomorrow I buy land." The others laughed louder. "Land," shouted one. "The land is not for those who tear cotton, but for those who send him to tear." The young man was silent. He knew that arguing was wasting strength. But in his heart, every mockery became one more brick in the house of his dream. Day after day, he was collecting wrinkled bills, a small bundle hidden under bed as if it were a treasure. Sometimes he took it out at night, in the light of the kerosene lamp. He counted them with trembling fingers. It was not much, but it was his. When he finally had courage, he looked for a man who sold land. He entered his office, which smelled of strong tobacco and waxed wood. The man had fat hands and a hoarse voice. The young day laborer put the money on the table. "I want to buy a piece of cotton field." The man looked at him from top to bottom. He looked at the money and released a dry laugh. With this you do not buy the fence, boy. The young man was silent. The laughter of the man and of others who were there sounded like slaps. He picked up the money with clumsy hands. A coin rolled to the ground. He crouched. He picked it up fast, and with his face lit, he went out to the street. Humiliation burned like fire in his stomach. At night, lying on the bed, tears flowed alone. He bit his lips so as not to sob loudly, and between tears he repeated in a low voice, "I do not give up. I do not give up." Months passed. He kept working. He kept saving. He decided to try something different. Go to the bank. That day he dressed with the least broken shirt he had. The bank smelled of new paper, fresh ink, and a small banknote. He looked at it without interest. "Properties?" he asked. "None." The young man replied. "Wages?" "None." The banker closed the book suddenly. The sound resounded in his chest. "Then you cannot. You are a day laborer. Come back when you are old, when you have something to lose." The young man looked down. He felt that the ground was opening under his feet. He left the bank with dry eyes, but his soul was broken. The sun was burning outside, but the words of the banker were burning him more. That night in the bank, for the first time he cried like a child. He covered his face with the rough blanket so that others did not hear him. Tears fell without stopping. Between the tears, he raised his eyes to the ceiling and murmured, "My God, give me a door, even if it is small. Just one. But I do not give up." That was his goal, to have his cotton field. It was not a whim. It was a need. He wanted a piece of land to sow, to harvest, to support his family, so as not to always live under the orders of a tyrant who humiliated him and laughed at him. He wanted his work, his sweat, and his tears to be for something of their own, so that his children, when they had them, would not grow between broken walls and rough blankets, but with a little dignity. That was his dream. That was his goal. And although everything seemed to him that it was impossible, in the depths of his heart a single phrase kept beating. "I do not give up." Some time later, he managed to rent a cheap land, so cheap that it looked like a gift. When he saw it for the first time, he immediately understood why. The land was dead. It was not fertile land. It was not land to invite to sow. It was dry, hard, cracked. It had big cracks, like dry veins. There were dead grass that looked like nails nailed to the ground, as if someone had wanted to close that piece of world forever. The owner, an old man with a tired look, spat on the ground and said, in a deep voice, "Nothing grows here. Others tried before you. They all got tired." The young man crouched. He put his hand on that dusty land. He took it between his fingers. He squeezed it hard. The land was deflated like flour without water. And yet, with a strange faith, he murmured, "It will grow." The old man laughed incredibly short. "You are close, boy. But there, you..." And so the battle began. He worked like never before. He got up before dawn, and without even eating, he went straight to the field. He removed stones, many, so many that it seemed that field had no end. He carried each one on his back with his injured hands and threw them out a fence. He plucked dry grass with his bare fingers until his palms were full of living flesh. He digged twisted grooves because he had no good tools, only an old shovel and a worn hoe. The canal was far away. He had to go with buckets, one in each hand. He walked again and again under the sun, sweating, tired, but convinced that each drop was worth it. Each bucket spilled over that land was like giving a sick man a drink. He planted cotton with faith, small seeds that looked like nothing, but for him they were everything. At first some green twigs sprung up, small, fragile, but alive. When he saw them, he felt something in his chest. He leaned over them and spoke to them in a low voice, like someone who speaks to a newborn child. "You are my hope. Grow, please." He stayed on his knees for a long time, looking at them, and for the first time in weeks he smiled. But the misfortune came soon. One day the canal stopped bringing water. The heat increased. The sun fell like lead and burned every leaf. What had been green began to turn pale. Then the plagues came, small insects almost invisible, biting the stems and leaving stains. The leaves curled up, dried up, became dust between the fingers. The young man tried everything, throwing water on them, covering them with rags, scaring the insects with smoke. But it was useless. The plants turned yellow, then brown, then nothing. His field was again like at the beginning, dead, dry, empty. At noon, when the young man was sitting there looking at the dry plants, the horse passed by. He stopped, looked at the ground, and smiled with malice. "I told you, boy, you were born to pick up cotton, not to sow it." The young man did not raise his head. He did not want to give him the pleasure of seeing tears. He only remained silent, with his jaw tight, while the horse moved away laughing. That night, he returned to the field with a shovel. He could not leave the dead plants there. One by one, he tore them off and buried them. He buried them slowly with respect, as if they were small bodies. And while he was doing it, he cried. The tears fell on the dry ground, mixing with the dust. He sat at the edge of the field, with his face between his hands, and thought that maybe it was true, that maybe he was doomed to be a day laborer all his life. But when dawn surprised him still sitting there, with his eyes swollen from so much crying, he got up. He dried his face with his sleeve, and with a hoarse voice he murmured, "I do not give up." Winter brought the worst. A frost covered the whole valley. The air of dawn was like a knife. The little cotton that was left, just a few weak plants, dawn black. The leaves were rigid, broken like glass. When he touched them, they broke into pieces. The young man picked them up with his hands. He held them for a moment, as if he did not want to let them go, and he saw them die on his own fingers. He knelt on the frozen ground. He had no words, only tears. Defeat weighed on him like a rib full of stones. He thought about giving up. He thought about leaving everything behind, becoming again just an obedient day laborer without dreams. Silence surrounded him. He could only hear the creaking of the ice under his knees. And then, in that silence, he heard a voice. It was not real. It was not there. It was his mother's voice, as if it came from afar, as if it traveled with the wind. "Son, even if the doors close, do not stop touching." The young man closed his eyes strongly. Tears rolled down his frozen cheeks. He slowly got up, his eyes red, his body trembling, and with a broken voice he murmured, "I do not give up." Days later, he heard a rumor among the day laborers. They said there was a forgotten land next to the old canal, a strip of land with stones, with salt shavings. Nobody wanted it. The young man went to see it. The ground creaked under his worn boots. He bent down, took a handful of dirt, and crushed it between his fingers. It was bad soil, yes, but in the middle of the salt and stones, he felt something. It was not fertile, but it was not completely dead either. "If I help you, breathe. Look," he said in a low voice. With the little money he had, he bought it, and he started again. The work was harder than ever. He removed stone after stone, some so big that he had to roll alone with his back. He made grooves with a rope as a guide, so that the water reached each floor. He brought water with buckets, over and over again, although his arms hurt. He sowed small seeds, but firm. He covered them carefully, as if they were treasures. And when the first stem sprouted, he took care of them as if they were sick children. He leaned over them and spoke to them. "Hold on, I hold on too." The headband passed several times. He no longer laughed. He only looked from the horse in silence. The young man, without raising his head, continued to work. Seasons passed. The sun, the rain, and the patience did their job. One day, the cotton field, his cotton field, was filled with white crops. There were not many, but they were his. He picked them up with injured hands. Each ball was a miracle, each stem a victory. He cried while he worked, because each pound of cotton was proof that he had not given up. When he sold the cotton, the buyer took a fiber, tasted it, smelled it, and said, "Surprise, it is clean cotton, strong. Who is it from?" The young man raised his head and clearly answered, "Mine, from my cotton field." The buyer felt respected, and the young man, for the first time, felt that everything he had lived had made sense. At dusk, he sat on the edge of his field. The sun went down slowly, dyeing the sky red. The air smelled of freshly cut cotton. He remembered the closed doors, the mockery, the tears, the nights of defeat. He remembered his mother's voice and smiled. A few days later, from the first harvest, the foreman went to deliver the cotton to the buyer, as he always did in the name of his boss. He arrived safely, with his head up, convinced that he was carrying good merchandise. The buyer, a just man and a man of few words, checked the fiber, smelled it, rubbed it between his fingers, measured it calmly. He barely breathed, and then, almost without looking up, he said, "It's fine, but does it taste good? I recently received another shipment, a cleaner, firmer, sweeter cotton than this one." The foreman looked at him surprised. "Who are you talking about?" the foreman asked. A few days later, the buyer smiled slightly. A young man. He said it was his, and I believe him, because cotton does not lie. Words pierce him like a whip. The foreman, who had always repeated that that day labor was born just to start, remained silent. He did not answer. He just picked up the papers with a stern face and left without looking back. Days passed, but he could not stop thinking. A young man, cotton cleaner than his boss. One afternoon, when the sun fell and dyed the sky red, the foreman appeared in the field of the young day laborer. He did not go on horseback, nor did he carry a whip. He walked slowly with his hands on his back. The young man saw him coming, but he did not get up. He kept removing grass at the edge of the furrow. The foreman stopped in front of him. He swallowed saliva. Then he said with a dry but sincere voice, "Good job. I was wrong about you." The young man looked at him in silence. The foreman tightened his jaw and added, "I made fun of you. I humiliated you. Today I come to apologize." He extended his hand. The young man hesitated for a moment, but he tightened it firmly. The foreman left slowly, still with pride in his walk. And the young man watched him leave, knowing that he had won something more than cotton, respect